Welcome to the POSTCAST. David Locke along with Ron Boone as the Jazz fall tonight. Final score 104-84. All right, see you. So we don't really have a lot to talk about tonight. If I were to take this very, very seriously, Ron, the question I would ask is, so the Jazz get manhandled in the second quarter of the game against the Memphis Grizzlies, or second half against Memphis, and they get manhandled again tonight. How much of that is relate? How much do those relate? That's the question. If I'm a fan, I'm listening to this, and I actually care enough to turn on after being hammered all night, that's what I want to know the answer to.
I would say that the big thing here is the Jazz are going to have to adjust, get used to a little different approach very to the aggressive defensive approach that those two teams are giving them, especially the perimeter defense. They don't run into that type of defense very often, and both times that they've ran into it this season, they have not responded very well. They take chances. It's like they turn into a perimeter shooting basketball team. We saw that here tonight, with only 2 points in the paint there in that first half.
2 points in the paint in the first half.
Unreal. I mean, that should not happen to a team that averages about 43, about close to 46 points in the paint a night.
Second thing that would jump out at me tonight is how Indiana played defense. Indiana overloaded the side where the ball was. Every time you drove, you ran into gold jerseys. They don't force turnovers. They did tonight. Jazz had, I think, one short of their season high in turnovers. They generally just protect the paint and then get out to the shooters. And the question I'd have to wonder is, what can we learn, and how do we do the same thing? Because that seemed somewhat similar to the way Chicago is, very schematic. Yeah. Chicago's been, Tom Thibodeau has got something figured out defensively that the rest of the league hasn't figured out, because they're the best defensive league. And I almost think Frank Vogel may have figured out the same thing, because that, to me, I mean, having a 7-2 guy in the middle certainly helps, but there seem to be some schematic things that are going on here.
And what's so noticeable is that this is a offensive league. I mean, this is a league that's geared for offensive players, and then it makes it so noticeable when teams are very good defensively. They're not good offensively. I mean, the Jazz didn't give them a fight here offensively tonight, but they're not that great offensively. I mean, their numbers are very high as far as scoring and the field goal percentage. Where they're shooting 42% for something like that for the year, which is not very good. But defensively, they've been able to stay in basketball games and come up with some victories. So when a team plays tremendous and very good defense, then it's noticeable. But this is not anything that you run into, every ball game.
My grandest fear here, I have two huge fears here, Ron.
Okay.
One is that the Jazz have been fully exposed, and those teams are going to do this. But there aren't that many teams that can do that. There's a few and far between who can do it. My second actually deals with an individual. Paul Millsap seemed like he was back, and then Derek Favors came back. And Paul Millsap now in the 4 games since Favors has been gone has scored 43 points. So he's back and now has been back. So now Paul's back to averaging 11 points a game. He's been close to outplayed in most of the last 4 games. I mean, David West shouldn't play that much better than Paul Millsap. That shouldn't happen to Paul Millsap. But David West was kind of the same way I thought about Jason Thompson this year. When Jason Thompson outplayed Paul Millsap, like, that shouldn't happen. And I'm not trying to isolate Paul Millsap in any way, because I could isolate Al Jefferson tonight, I could isolate everybody. Everybody was terrible. But my only concern is I'm looking at Paul Millsap, and he's got this stretch of great games, and they coincided with Derek Favors being injured. And I just hope that somehow Favors' return hasn't somehow jacked up Paul Millsap again, because we're not going to win a lot without Paul Millsap playing well.
We need Paul. You need Paul, and I think you need Derek Favors there as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't understand it, and I hope you're absolutely wrong, but, that's what you see. But I don't know, maybe Favors need to play a little center sometimes and have Paul out there on the floor at the same time. I mean, if that's the case, then, one of those guys have to figure it out, meaning Paul's have to figure it out and play his game. But aside from all of that, the Jazz just did not look good tonight, and we have to give Indiana a lot of credit.
Right.
Because this is a very good defensive team, and they had a good offensive night.
Indiana's the third quarter tonight, the Jazz go 3 of 20. They commit 8 turnovers and score 8 points in that second quarter. They started 0-4 with 4 turnovers. The bench unit just didn't have anything. They get their first field goal at the 7:32 mark. They get their second field goal at the 4:40 mark, and they only got one more the rest of the quarter. So that's where this game fell apart, but it kind of had fallen apart a little bit earlier. The Jazz went just 5 of 17 to close the first quarter. Al Jefferson goes 0 of 5. He has just one field goal in this ball game tonight, which is obviously, I mean, there's no way to zero in on anything tonight. The only final thing I would ask you, or we would talk about, Alec Burks, who everybody wants to see, got extended run tonight. Any major takeaway tonight? I didn't see anything tonight that. I mean, he came aggressively, shot an awful lot. He played his college game. He just went out and, if he's in the D League, this is what he would do. And he played a D League game for 13 minutes because that's who was on the floor.
In the time that he was in the basketball game offensively, we knew exactly that he could do just that. But you can't take away anything from a blowout basketball game with a guy. So, for the most part, the next ball game, he'll go back to where he was last night. And maybe, if depending on the ball game tomorrow, he might, have earned a few minutes by the way he played tonight.
And
but
for those
I don't think so.
For those of you 5 people that are big enough diehards, up top, right there, standing there, former Ballet West ballerina Jenny Robinson, who you can follow on Twitter. What is it, Jen Robs? Is that right? I think it's somewhere in there. Many of you are Jazz fans. She's on the hashtag all the time. So there you go. That's the only worthwhile part of watching this. Little treat at the end. Say hi, Jenny. Woo! Okay, we're done. And if you're listening on audio, you really wonder what the heck just happened.